Hi, Tim Sells here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to fix your marketing. And the main thing that I'm going to be focusing on is the master that controls all of your marketing. And it's probably the most important concept in all of marketing. And it's going to be, it's a difficult explanation. In other words, you're going to have to really pay attention to this, but it will absolutely be worth your effort. All right, in the last video, what I talked about was a post that Rudolph did. And in that post, he said, what do you do if you spend hours creating a short video and only your upline like it in social media? All right, and so I did a breakdown of that video in my last video. Okay, so here I'm showing you how to fix marketing problems, because in my explanation, I used a word in there that I don't think most people understood, okay? So what it is that variable factors, and then the 5 variables. This was all in the last video, okay? And so then I said, this is the variable, all right? And so that concept of the variable is something that really goes quite deep, very deep in marketing, as well as everything that everything you do has to do with this, okay? So let me just break it down here. So variable, it's a factor. And the factor is the big thing here. A factor that may be subject to change. All right, so that's a lob into nothing, right? So it's very hard to get your hands on that understanding. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of an example to groove that in. So you have weather. And so a factor that may be subject to change. All right, so hot to cold, that's a variable. Dry to humid, variable. Will it snow? Maybe not. Will it wind be strong? Maybe not. Okay, you see how those are factors that are subject to change? All right. Now, let's give a life example. So, you're planning a camping trip or a boating trip or whatever kind of trip you want to go on to. And so there is the before versus after. In other words, how do you turn around and look at this from a different direction is what I'm trying to get you to do. Because there's the before the camping trip and then there's the after. One of those is planned well, had necessary equipment, and the other side is, oh crap, we didn't plan for that, okay? Because if you didn't know that there was going to be high winds on the seas, then you had a miserable trip, right? And so if you didn't know that it was going to snow, then wow, that was a cold trip, right? So that's kind of the idea that when we're looking at marketing and we're looking at other stuff, it's better to understand the variable factor, how much it varies, before you do your marketing. But it's excellent also to, after you get great responses or no responses, it's fantastic to flip it around and say, oh crap, what did I miss? And so that's the reason this conversation of variable and the factors that are subject to change is such an important one, okay? So now I'm going to kind of dive in. I'm going to tell you how I experienced this. All right, so car is broken down in both situations. What's the difference? This person over here, what's he doing? He is hoping it'll fix itself. Constantly frustrated because, quote, it doesn't work, right? That's the problem here. He doesn't know the variables. This person over here knows the variables, the factors, locates the problem, fixes the problem. That's the difference between these two people. And that's the exact same thing in your marketing. All right, there's people who hope they get responses. There's other people who know the variables and they adjust them. They put it out there. They realize it didn't work. They pull it back and then they tweak something, a variable, something. All right, so just to really keep on hammering this concept, because it goes away. You know, you have the idea, the concept, and then it like slides out, you know. And so just like you have a volume button, that's a variable, right? You have a light button where you can make it brighter and darker. You slide that little thing, right? You slide it up, you slide it down. That's what I mean by variable. And then the whole factor comes into, what does it do? How much does it change? Okay. All right. You can rarely fix a problem that you don't know is the problem. And all you have left to blame is the whole it thing. It. What's it? It's the thing they don't know. Okay. So it. All right. So this is how I learned to think. Okay. And I know that's a really interesting way that I put that, because before I had an experience and after I had another experience, it changed my life completely in how I look at anything and everything. And it had to do with these factors. And so I was a little boy, probably 13 or 14 years old. And I used to mow yards, and I would make $1 or $2 to mow a yard. And there was a time that it didn't work, and it won't start. It's all I knew, won't start. Okay. And just as I showed you that picture back here, I'm that person, except I'm looking at it, right? I'm like, why aren't you working? I'm supposed to pull this thing and you're supposed to work. Why isn't it working? And so I walked the lawnmower. It's about 2 miles. I went on Google Earth today and I plotted to that Briggs & Stratton building where they rebuilt engines in there in lawnmowers. And I was obviously a feisty kid, a curious kid, willing to walk for 2 miles to get my lawnmower fixed. And there was an old man. I laughed at it when I wrote it, because I'm like, I'm about the same age as that guy was. That old man taught me how to think. All right. And so I'm going to walk you through it, because it's how I learned it. It's how I got it. All right. So unscrew. So on the back of a lawnmower, you're going to have what's called a spark plug. All right. And then this thing right here that you attach to it. Okay, so you're going to pull the spark plug out, and then you're going to put that right back inside of there to create an electrical connection. All right, so unscrew the spark plug, attach to the wire. So this old man walked me in and showed me this instead of just fixing my lawnmower. Because if he fixed my lawnmower, I'd have been thankful. I'd have paid him. I'd have walked back and it would have run for a while. But if it ever broke down again, I'd have to walk another 2 miles back. Okay. But this man saw something in me that said, I want to teach this guy. All right. And so I'm just forever grateful for this experience. So just play with me for just a minute, because there's a moment that it all happens. Okay. All right. So you pull that plug out, you plug it inside that electrical thing, and then you're going to turn off the lights and pull the cord, okay, looking at the spark plug. This is that spark plug, all right? And what you're looking for is a little zzz, all right? That's that little lightning bolt that I put in there. That's what you're looking for. When you pull the cord in the dark and you're watching the spark plug, you're seeing, does it have spark? All right. If it doesn't have spark, you have an electrical problem. If it has a spark, but it does not crank, you have a fuel problem. And just like that, the factors were cut in half. Okay? In other words, this is like what mechanics do. This is what everybody does, but they're just not aware of the simplicity because a person will know one way to do something. Somebody will know how to solve something, but it doesn't mean that they transport that how to solve to other things. All right? And this is the fundamental underneath it. And I remember when he told me this, he said, "You have a fuel problem, not an electric problem." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, if one of these wires or something like that came loose or something, then you just need to tighten that up. But because it gets a spark and it won't crank, you've got a fuel problem." And so basically from the gas tank to the spark plug, there's something clogging it. That's it. It's a pipe that runs through there. Okay? There's a hose that runs from the gas tank into the carburetor, and the carburetor into where it's going to be given to the spark plug. And so, but the whole point that I'm trying to make in this is that it was just the simplicity that he was able to break apart a very complex, confusing, nothing works thing into, all right, now we've isolated that it's not that, it's that. Okay. So what people call troubleshooting is actually factor searching. That's what it really is. You're looking for the factors. Okay, and which ones can you move out and say, those aren't the problem, let's look here. All right? And this is not critical thinking. My gosh, what a silly idea that is, because all that it is it's antagonistic thinking. In other words, somebody says something and you automatically flip to the other side and say, no, right? I think different. Like, that's not smart. That's not intelligent thinking. Being able to search out factors that cause something is really valuable. Really, really valuable, because it allows you to solve problems in your life so easily compared to not knowing why something is happening. All right. Okay, so now we get into marketing. And this is going to be a bit of a leap over. Okay, so I taught you about, going camping. I gave examples there. I talked about how I was able to, the old man helped me. And that was with the lawnmower, our mechanical thing. And so now we're moving into marketing, all right? So when trying to fix your marketing, attract varies, okay? Right? So there's a variable, it varies a bit, right? So when you're trying to get to attract something, I'm going to show you visual examples in just a second. Engagement, trying to get somebody to engage, there's a variable. Your ability to influence them through your messaging is variable. Knowing your product, it varies compared to others, because you're going to have to explain that to somebody, right? So how does your product compare to somebody else? All right, well, that prospect may never have ever heard of the category of product you're talking about. And so your explanation is going to have to be longer, deeper. And you're going to have to focus more on the product, the problem that they have instead of the solution, because it might be, you might have to talk with too many words that they don't understand. And so you might just focus on what the problem is and that this solves it, okay? So, and then know your audience. That's a variable, okay? Because one person versus a whole audience or something like that. So what do they need and want? That's a big question, right? And so now I got to ask the question to you. Which one of these most influence all others? Is it attract? Is it engage? Is it influence? Is it the product? Is it the audience? It's the audience. The audience influences all of this. I wrote it. The prospect is the senior factor. The more you know about your prospect or audience, the better you can create content that does attract, engage, and influence the prospect. The prospect is the master adjuster for the factors that vary in marketing. And so in other words, that's the whole thing. All of the other stuff, I'm going to go backwards. All of the other stuff is controlled by the audience. In other words, and I will show you what I mean by controlled by. Well, how could they be controlled by when I'm up here creating some sort of an artwork to attract the person in order to look at it, right? What do they want to see? Duh. What would cause them to engage? In other words, the whole thing is that, right? So they are the absolute senior factor in all of your marketing. Okay, factors that vary. All right, so attract varies based upon number 5. Engage varies based upon number 5. Influence message varies based upon number 5. And knowing your product varies based on number 5. I'm going to get more into that when I start training you guys on positioning your product. An offer is different than a product or a service or whatever. And so it's your positioning, but knowing your product and positioning is completely influenced by it. Okay, so when I talk to you about the camping trip, the weather was what you have to pay attention to. If you don't pay attention to it, then it's going to be, hey, we did that successfully, or, oh crap, that was a horrible trip. Because weather was the major influencer of all of the factors. And so now that's the way that you have to kind of look at, they call it Mother Nature, the weather, what didn't agree with us, no, that just means that they weren't prepared for it. And so same with marketing. So there is a Mother Nature of marketing, if you will. All right, so I want to, and by the way, I just want to mention that this is the primary reason that I chose network marketing over all other kinds of marketing, because I get to ask the prospect. I get to engage with them myself. I like to find out what they need and want. Later on, when we get over into contact the prospect, I'm going to share with you, and a lot of people already know me, and I'm known for this particular training called Professional Inviter, where I put all of the focus on finding out the needs, wants, and don't wants of the prospect. And I teach people how to do that. And now, all of you who know me for that, now you know the backstory about how it came to be. And so when I left that old man's workshop, the whole walk home, I'm so glad that I walked, because the whole walk home, all I could think about was, man, it's everything. It's just everything. And so then I would ask them when I would go up and knock on people's door and ask them if I could mow their yard, I asked them, hey, look, I've got a setting and I can be 3 inches above. I can be 2 inches. In other words, the grass cut, it can be 3 inches or 2 inches, or do you want it cut really, really, shallow? In other words, close to the ground, how do you want it cut? And things like that. Do you want me to sweep the grass off your driveway when I'm done? I would ask these people these things. All right. And so it just really utterly changed my life on it. Okay. So I want to walk you through, this is just 3 pieces of mail that was dropped on my desk yesterday. And I just want to show you a concept. Okay. So how well does the people who mailed these pieces to me, how well do they know me? That was what I was interested in. And you should be interested in them as well. And with everything that you get. Okay, so I'm going to pick up Ace Hardware here. Well, first of all, I'll do this one. Okay, so Ace Hardware. All right, so I have one up the street. I go to it. They always ask me for my phone number in there. They know me. I live in an agricultural area. And so it's a logical place that I go to. Okay. All right. So it says around the block with gifts in stock. And it has grills, 2 different grills here, 3 different grills with a bow on top of it. All right. So now we know that they are teasing me and telling me about that Black Friday's coming up and gifts that are coming up and that I should buy from Ace Hardware. Okay, and they have hedge cutters, and they have a vacuum cleaner and a toolbox and 3 grills. Okay, so that told me a whole lot. It told me that they ain't from around here because in the winter, we're buried in snow up here. And so it wasn't my local Ace that put this out. This was the one that's going to broadcast to all Ace Hardware customers. That's the first thing that I noticed. And since I live in an agricultural area, I mean, this is your typical hardware stuff, but it's not the stuff that agriculture uses. And so I just found it interesting. And so now you get the idea. So I get this. Is it attractive? Is it engaging enough for me to go and pull out my pocket knife and cut that little tiny piece of clear thing for me to open it up and see what else is in there? It wasn't. Okay, because I immediately thought they don't know my area. All right, there you go. All right, so I got sent this Capital One credit card offer. And as soon as I saw it, I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but I've done printing, all right? And I know cardstock and I know embossing. It's real embossing. Who would spend that kind of money for the paper and the embossing on this piece of paper? And who would spend that much on that piece of paper? Okay, so these arrows that are pointing to earn $700 in cash bonus, unlimited cash back. Wow, they're paying me $700 to take their credit card. Okay? All right, so they knew their audience, almost, because I don't like credit cards. Okay, this one, and by the way, when I was in the military, I did not get this classy types of stuff. They obviously know I'm a high-valued net worth individual, all right? That's the reason that they would spend that kind of money, because somebody with that I could go and I could spend $50,000 on a credit card to buy a car, and it would pay back all of their stuff, right? Just because of the 1% merchant fee or 1.2 or whatever it is. All right, so this one, total bomb, right? Compared to this one, right? Wells Fargo, I banked there, right? Like, wow. And it says too much monthly debt. They do not know me at all. I don't have debt, okay? So they don't know me at all. So I didn't even bother to do that, and I don't want that anyway. But they did the very best job of engagement from our attractiveness in terms of I recognized that they actually put the aesthetics on the front to attract me. Okay? All right. So, therefore, okay, so the last thing I talked about was the prospect is everything. So, because you saw my attitudes toward these things, therefore you must forfeit your desires. Don't think about your earnings, number of people you're going to get, or anything like that. You have to forfeit that. And your knowledge. I'll tell you why your knowledge in just a second as I go through here. When you are creating marketing material, social media posts, comments, sales presentations, etc., you must create them pretending you are one of the audience. The one must represent the desire and product sophistication of the audience. Let me break this one down. Okay, so the desires, that's everything we talk about in marketing. That's the attraction, the engagement, all of it. Okay? That's that. The product sophistication has to do with what level of knowledge does the prospect or the audience, how much do they know about what you sell? Okay, so if somebody tries to sell me a water filter, man, they got to really know their stuff. Okay, because I'm not a Brita person. I know too much about water. I know too much about filtration and stuff like that. So they're going to have to be really up their game at a very high level in order to communicate to me, right? But obviously, Britta's been extremely successful at bed, breath, and beyond, because I go in and I see them looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you buy that thing? Like, it just takes the taste of chlorine out. It doesn't even remove chlorine. It doesn't get out, anyway, I won't go there. So anyway, it's this product sophistication. If you've got a person who's been on 30 diets and you're trying to tell them about a diet you've got, then you're going to have to be sophisticated. You're going to have to, that's why I said you have to forfeit your knowledge. You have to talk to the audience. And the audience is the one person that you have voted to say this person represents all that I'm going to communicate to. That person's knowledge, that person's desires, all of it. That's what I'm after. Okay. All right. So people say, get inside the prospect's head. Well, I'd say, no, you need to be the prospect. Okay. So I literally will take the prospect and I'll put a name on a 3x5 card. I'll tape it to the bottom of my computer monitor, and I've just got that person's name, and I'm just writing to that one person. The moment that I think that Bill and Bob, that's when I go off the rail. All right, I just don't keep the right conversation going, and it veers off a little bit. Product sophistication, I bomb it every single time. I try to educate instead of communicating at their level. All right. So, all right. So, please comment on this one. All right. So, what's your view on factors that vary marketing? All right. It's a big, huge concept. And I want to know, honestly, I want to know, because I tried to assess where people, could my audience grasp this concept and see how valuable it actually was. And so I want to know whether or not you really truly did understand the concept. So factors that vary in network marketing. Do you understand the concept? Do you feel the prospect is the senior factor after all that I shared? Because a lot of people say, you have to focus on the audience or your customer or whatever. Yes, everybody knows that. However, why? Because they control all things you do in marketing. All right, so like, share, subscribe, and if you haven't already, you can join our Telegram group. And I appreciate so much that you watched all the way to the end of this. Thank you very much.